What is up, everybody, and welcome to another video. In today's video, I am doing my Squid Industries Penny Tsunami. Got that flipping, having a good time with that. And I wanted to talk a little bit today about some music I've been enjoying recently. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go a little... I might deep dive into the first album and then go further into the second album later after I've had more time to kind of collect my thoughts about it, because it is a newer album. It's from an artist that you almost definitely recognize and have heard of, and if you haven't, I highly suggest listening. Porter Robinson, classic. I love Porter's music. It's been very impactful to me for a long time, but specifically the last two albums, Nurture and then Smile, have been really, really interesting and very impactful to me just in general. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit today. So, Smile is a very interesting album. That's the newest album from Porter. I definitely suggest listening to it. It's a very fun album. It has a lot going on. It's very interesting. If you haven't listened to Nurture, I would really suggest you listen to that one first. But I would go into Nurture with the knowledge as to kind of what it's about maybe and what it's going for. There is a really, really incredible video on a channel that I found recently that's really small. They don't have a lot, they haven't made a lot of videos. They made one video that was about the album Nurture, and they kind of deep dived into its themes and what it's about and its meaning and all that, and I thought that was really cool. So I'll probably link that in the description below this video. So if you want a really, really well-made deep dive into what Nurture is about, please go check out that video. But I wanted to talk about the themes of both of those albums and kind of give you some of my perspective on it, because I think there's a lot going on there that's really cool. So first off, the album Nurture is a really interesting album in Porter Robinson's library, because what happened to Porter after he released Worlds, which is an album that is known for honestly changing the face of the music industry to some degree. It changed a lot about the way that pop music was produced and the way that electronic music was looked at and produced. Worlds was a game changer from someone who at the time was relatively young. Worlds was released, I think, in, maybe 2014, maybe 2016. It is 2014 Worlds, the first big album from Porter. Porter did EDM kind of stuff before that, but Worlds was a really big shift. It was a completely different thing than he had ever done before, and it really left its mark on the music industry. Unfortunately for Porter, he was very young when this happened, and put way too much effort into Worlds that he could then not replicate. And so after creating all of this stuff from Worlds, it became hard for him to make any more art after that point. He kind of put everything he had into that project, and so it led to him not really being able to create anything else. After Worlds, he had a very hard time trying to create new music. He started a few different aliases, which he released some music under, and he released Shelter, which was probably one of the best Porter songs of all time, with Maddie on. And him and Maddie on are good friends, and so that's always wonderful to see him and Hugo working together. But at the end of the day, Worlds and the success of it and the artistry behind it and the effort that he put into it kind of fucked him up at the end of the day. He kind of got screwed up by all of that stuff, especially with where it happened in his life, how young he was, and everything that was going on. It was a big thing, and it stopped him from being able to make new music for a very long time, because he wasn't really proud of anything he was creating. And I think that is a very interesting place to be. I mean, it's similar to burnout, or just feeling like you're at the bottom of a mountain creatively and you can't climb back up it, or feeling sort of like you've been pushing the boulder up the hill and the boulder keeps falling back down, right? And so, Nurture was finally released in 2021. And Nurture is a game changer of an album and a very, very interesting release from Porter. It was extremely experimental, and as the first singles started being released, it was very clear that Porter had found something that he really felt like expressing and was feeling that sense of like joy from creating music again, which I think is so cool to see. And you can really feel that happening in the album and over the course of the album. So, that's why Nurture happened. Nurture is kind of Porter's come back to music after he couldn't make music for so long. Suddenly, he found that inspiration again and created the album Nurture. And Nurture brings its inspiration from a lot of different places and has a lot of different themes, but the primary theme throughout the entire album is creation. It is learning to express yourself through art. It is learning that things don't need to be perfect to be as good as they can be. And learning that expression is fundamental to, how we create art. It has a lot to do with discovering yourself. It has a lot to do with self-expression. It has a lot to do with art. It's really, really cool listen. And each part of the album really goes through different stages of that. So if I pull up the track list here, you have Lifelike, which kind of starts as a just example of the feeling of coming back to life over a period of time. It starts with almost like the sound of a heart rate monitor and a heartbeat, and then you get birds and trees and all sorts of cool stuff. And this soundscape sort of evolves into a place of like, oh, this is what life sounds like. And I'm paraphrasing from the video that I linked below, so my apologies there. But I think that's a really cool moment because it is really a rebirth for Porter. It is a moment where he is finding, at the beginning of this album, the first thing he's released in forever, he's finding what it's like to be alive again and how to express that in a way that he hasn't been able to in a very long time. Then you have Look at the Sky, and Look at the Sky is a sort of righteous tribulation of being like, hey, I am here, I exist, and I don't intend on going away. And I think it's just a really pretty song in that way, and there's a lot of power behind it and sort of the meaning behind it and the sort of self-discovery that I think it took to get there. And then you have Get Your Wish, and Get Your Wish was one of the first songs that was actually released from the album as a single, and Get Your Wish is a very interesting song to me. Get Your Wish is about Porter's struggle with, getting his wish. Like, he got everything he wanted after releasing all of his electronic music and worlds and everything like that. He was regarded as one of the best musicians of all time. He had huge concerts and tons of fans and all this stuff. And he says, did you get your wish? Was it everything you wanted? Did it make you happy? And the realization throughout the song is sort of this understanding that getting his wish didn't necessarily make him happy. It wasn't necessarily everything he ever needed or wanted. So you have within the lyrics, but if glory makes you happy, why are you so broken up? So tell me how it felt when you walked on water. Did you get your wish? He is, and then it says idol. He's comparing the experience of getting that wish, of becoming an idol, of experiencing this audience performer interaction that should be everything he's wanted and should be everything to make him feel fulfilled, and it isn't. He feels empty. He feels, sad, and it left him in a place where he couldn't do anything. But then, the second half of it, it says, floating to the surface quicker than you sank. This is about the rise, the coming back. Even though he sank, even though he lost his way and wasn't able to continue creating music, he did come back. He says, don't say you lose just yet, get up and move ahead, and not only for yourself, because that's your role, the work that stirred your soul you can make for someone else. And I think that is really interesting because it's talking about the perspective of realizing that, like, as someone in the public eye like Porter, you have the creations that you make, whether or not they are something that really moves you yourself at the end of the day. Maybe that's not even necessarily what your role is. You know, are you creating art for yourself? Certainly, to some degree, but the work that stirred your soul, the stuff that made you want to make music in the first place, all of the music that was created by others that then inspired you, you can do the same thing. You can create works that will inspire other people. And for me, I connect with that very deeply because, like, I've seen that. I've genuinely experienced that through my involvement with the balisong community. Like, I have inspired people to do this, not only get into the hobby, but like to make videos. And then those people who I inspired to do stuff like this, then retroactively inspire me back, which I think is something that's really, really interesting. You know, that the cyclical nature of inspiration being something where it's like, I had no expectation of even getting to where I am today, you know, doing this YouTube stuff and having an audience and like being able to talk to y'all. That wasn't something that I planned. It wasn't something that I expected, but it is something I'm grateful for. And similar to Porter in this way, it's the realization that the art that you create isn't necessarily something for yourself, even though it can be, and it is important to create art for yourself. At the end of the day, one of the things that is the most important is the journey of creating that art and the inspiration that it can provide to other people. You know, there's this concept of death of the artist. The art is what people take away from it, not what the artist intended, right? So whether or not someone intends something with the art that they've created, that doesn't matter. What matters is your personal experience with that art. Whatever its meaning to you is the meaning that you should take away from it, because that's how that works. Like, everybody has their own personal interpretation of what things might mean, and that is what leads to inspiration, and that's what leads to new forms of art happening, is people taking inspiration from places and then interpreting it through their own lens and creating something new and beautiful. So that is where we're at in the album with Get Your Wish. You've got this sort of thing of like, you know, you got everything you wanted, but was it everything you wanted? And understanding that, you know, even though you've gone through all of these tribulations and hard things, you will get somewhere, and what you've created will inspire other people. So then we get through Wind Tempos into Musician and Do Re Mi Fa Sol La Ti Do. Both of those songs being very much based in just the idea of music creation. So Musician is a song about Porter's struggle with being a musician, being an artist, and like trying to sort of, I guess, exist as someone who is a creative person who is having trouble making anything. There's literally a point in it where like some parental figure is basically telling him to get a job because he hasn't made music in such a long time. And the song Musician is about his struggle with like knowing that this is what he wants to do with his life, but being physically incapable of actually performing the duty due to his anxieties. And I think that's a really interesting perspective and like thing that isn't often thought about, is like, how can those struggles interact in that way? And that's something that I connect with extremely deeply. And then Do Re Mi Fa Sol La Ti Do is also a very interesting song because it doesn't have very much lyrics. The entire song is about how music is expression, and without lyrics, you still get that artistic expression. So he says, you know, there's too much I want to say, so do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And it's literally just that very direct, like, I want to say things to an audience. I want people to understand what I'm getting at, and I have so many things I want to express, but sometimes you just can't actually say those things, and so he expresses them through the music itself. And I think that's a really, really cool perspective to explore at this point in the album when you're only about halfway through it. Okay, so moving on from there, we get a little bit deeper into the album, and you go into Mirror and Something Comforting, and all of this cool stuff. And there's a lot to go in there between all of those. But really, I want to skip ahead to the end here with Trying to Feel Alive, because Trying to Feel Alive is a very interesting conclusion to the sort of story that Porter has put together in the album Nurture. Trying to Feel Alive is about the experience of creating this album in the first place. So it opens with, well, do you feel better now? I thought I'd run until the sky came out, and with the sunlight on my face, something changed. I'm just trying to feel alive. You climbed a mountain, are you satisfied? You stand at the top, you already want to do this one more time. What he's saying in there is that this time feels different. This time, when he created Worlds, it was a exhausting effort to create something completely unique, and he put all of his effort that he could into it, and honestly more than he probably should have, which led to the burnout that resulted in him not being able to create music for so long, right? And it has a lot to do with burnout and anxieties and all sorts of stuff. But at the end of this creative process, at the end of Nurture, what he's done is, instead of trying desperately to create something that is perfect and good, he realized that wasn't the point from the beginning. Maybe he wasn't even actually doing that during Worlds. Maybe the entire time it was just about trying to do it in the first place. Maybe it is the process itself of trying to create art that is the thing that makes the art beautiful. It is that process of working and endeavoring to create something that really leaves you in a important place. And so he finds himself at the end of this album in a much better place than he was before. He says, maybe it's a gift that I couldn't recognize. Maybe I don't really need to feel satisfied. Maybe it's a gift that I spent all this time just trying to feel alive. Maybe I don't really want to be satisfied. Maybe it's a gift that I couldn't recognize. And then somebody somewhere finds the warmth of summer in the songs you write. Maybe it's a gift that I couldn't recognize, just trying to feel alive. He creates music as a form of self-expression. But what he's talking about here is that creation and that act itself also affects others in very deep, intimate ways that are important. And it is important from his perspective to keep creating music because it can have that effect on people. Whether or not it is going to, he's realized that it's important for him to try, because that form of self-expression is both something that he enjoys and that feeling of longing to be satisfied. Because that's the thing, right? He created Worlds and he felt unsatisfied. Even though he had created one of the most influential albums of all time, he felt unsatisfied with it. And then couldn't create anything else because he believed that everything he needed to create needed to satisfy some primal urge. And whenever he made music and it didn't satisfy him, he felt like he couldn't release it. And so he was in this, vicious cycle of creating things and hoping that it'll go somewhere. But at the end of the day, the truth is, he never really wanted to be satisfied. In fact, the gift itself, the process that forces you to keep creating the thing that makes you want to make more art, is that insatisfaction. It is that feeling of not being satisfiable, because that's not the point of creating art. It is not for you to feel satisfied. It is for you to express that feeling. So I think that's a really interesting sort of climactic release to the end of the album. And so the album itself, Nurture, is about a rediscovery of the creative process and a rediscovery of himself and the way that he is, experiencing that creative process and allowing himself to sort of output new creative works in ways that he wasn't able to before. So that's that. The other album, which was just released, is Smile. And once again, as I said, if you want a full breakdown of Nurture that has, it's one of the best video essays I've genuinely ever watched, please go check it out. It's linked in the video description. But Smile is the newest album from Porter, and this came out in 2024, so this is a much shorter period of time since the last album compared to that album and Worlds. So Smile came out 10 years after Worlds and 3 years after Nurture. So Smile is a very interesting album because it is partially about the creative process, but I think it's also a lot more about self-discovery. It feels like Smile is a lot more about Porter sort of learning to love himself and others in new ways, and just learning to have fun again, right? Smile is a lot less serious in some ways, and yet at the same time almost more serious than he's ever been. You've got some really standout songs throughout its runtime, and I think I'll probably make a video in the future where I kind of deep dive into it closer to the way that I did with Nurture in the future. But you have songs like Knock Yourself Out, which is sort of a conversation he's having with himself. You have Cheerleader, which is a song that is about parasocial relationships and kind of this weird area that parasocial relationships take up, where it's like, to some degree, they seem like an unhealthy thing that you don't need, and that like you're like, oh yeah, the person who has a parasocial relationship with me is the one that needs me. But at the same time, you realize that your fans and the people that you have a parasocial relationship, you actually need them too. It is a two-way street, weirdly, even though it is parasocial in nature. Then you have Russian Roulette, which I find to be a very interesting song from Porter. Porter, for the longest time, has been a real, like, people look up to Porter as someone who creates music that makes you want to keep going, right? It's a lot of people have said that, like, oh, some of the stuff from Worlds and like Lionhearted and Sad Machine and Shelter and like almost all of Nurture, a lot of it is music that makes you want to keep going. And so Porter, in this album, which is in my opinion, the album itself sort of represents a self-actualization of understanding what he is and what his nature, what the nature of his relationship is with his fans and the public, and coming to accept that and coming to understand that maybe that is beautiful and something that he should be proud of and love. Russian Roulette provides a song that is quite literally telling you should keep going. It is quite literally the most out there, out in front, being like, hey, don't do this, you idiot. Keep going. Life is worth living. And it's really, really interesting that he would, like, see what he is considered to be by a lot of people and just be like, okay, well, if I'm that guy, I'm going to make the most that song ever. And in some ways, it's like, it's interesting because on some level it feels like it should be cringe because it is so raw and so direct. And at the same time, because it is so raw and so direct, it is impactful and real. And I think that's really interesting. Perfect Pinterest Garden is an interesting one that I need to read more into the lyrics and like sort of digest the meaning from it. But it appears to be about parasocial relationships. And I mean, a lot of this album appears to be about parasocial relationships and sort of his relationship with the audience and that impacting his relationship with himself. As you move along, each song is extremely good. Mona Lisa is a really good personal favorite in terms of like how it actually goes. I just love the breakdown at the second half of it. But Everything to me is the last song of the album. And it is a really, really interesting song that is basically a direct love letter from Porter to his audience, like at a live show. So it's like Porter saying, hey, I am he says that he literally loves his audience through that song. The song is about, you know, being in a show, experiencing that, and experiencing a connection with his fans. And even though it is a very impersonal thing, on some level it is deeply personal, because he loves his fans and his fans love him back. There is this weird, deep level of connection where he's poured his heart out on stage multiple times. Like, for the audience, he's told us everything wrong with him. We know the story of his life. And so, to some degree, there is a real level of impactfulness that, like, exists within that. And that is just a really interesting thing, I think. Yeah, so, and so everything to me appears to be a sort of acknowledgement of that, and interestingly, a different perspective than you usually see on parasocial relationships, because they're often taken as being a overtly negative thing, something that is a bad product of the internet's existence. And that is true in some cases when taken to some extremes, but at the same time, I think that Porter is showing within everything to me the beauty that can exist from those things. The fact that you can have a deep, you know, psychological connection to someone that you don't even know because of the art that they've created, that might actually be kind of beautiful, right? Like, there's like something going on there that's really cool. The fact that he can make music and you can go to a performance and what he says and does on stage can genuinely touch you in a very deep way that changes your life. That is worth something more than just calling it a parasocial relationship, right? Like, that is beautiful on a deep degree. And so I think that's kind of what he's getting at with, honestly, the entirety of Smile in general, but everything to me in specific, I think really ties together the themes of the album in a very neat way. So that is pretty much it for this one. This has been one big, long, rambly video. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Now I need to make the thumbnail for it. So let's see what we can do here. Maybe I hold my knife and it says Porter Robinson, and that's the joke. I don't know. What do we got here? Yeah, this? Is that good? Is that good? I don't know. But yeah, I really, really, really enjoyed getting to do this. I mean, I've wanted to talk about these albums for quite some time because they've had a lot of impact on me. I have more albums I would like to talk about in the future too, so let me know if you enjoyed this style of content, where, as I said, it's really not about what I'm flipping at all. It is about whatever I'm talking about, I guess. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it wasn't boring. And I hope you took something away from it. If you have any opinions on these albums, or if you have any albums that you think I would enjoy because of my thoughts in this video, like if you have some albums that have been impactful to you and you would like me to listen to them, leave them below. I'd love to hear it, and I'd love to hear your opinions on these albums too. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. I know it's a bit of a long one, but it's something I really wanted to talk about for a while. So yeah, I guess I'll see y'all later. Peace.